Deep in the kingdom of Nzadi, names were more than just words, they were power. A name carried the weight of a person's soul. To know someone's true name was to hold a piece of their spirit. That was why the elders always warned. Never speak your true name carelessly, for if it is stolen, you will forget who you are. Most thought it was just an old tale. A story to keep children from shouting their names too freely, a superstition whispered around the fire. Until the night the shadow came. It started in the fishing village of Luamba, nestled beside the great Nzadi river. One morning, an old fisherman woke to find something missing. It wasn't his net or his boat, it was something deeper. He stared at his reflection in the water and felt a hollow ache in his chest. His wife called to him. "Wanga." He frowned. "Who is Wanga?" His wife's face crumpled. "You are." But he only shook his head. That name felt like an empty shell. He knew how to fish, knew the feel of the river's pool, knew the taste of salted tilapia, but his name. Gone. And Wanga was only the first. The little girl forgot the name her mother gave her. A young hunter, strong and skilled, no longer recognized the name his father had blessed upon his brow. One by one, people lost their names. And with each stolen name, they became hollow. They still spoke, still walked, still lived, but they were incomplete, like stories with missing endings. The village panicked. What kind of spirit could steal something as sacred as a name? Then, one night, a boy named Jabari saw it. Jabari had always been curious, always questioning things that others feared. So when he noticed the strange hush settling over Luamba, he did what no one else dared, he went searching. It was near the river that he first felt it. His own shadow, moving without him. He turned sharply. The moon was bright, the water still, but his shadow twisted unnaturally, stretching like a living thing. And then, it rose. Two glowing eyes opened within the darkness. Jabari stumbled back. His voice came in a whisper. What are you?" The shadow smiled, a thin, shifting grin. "I am what you fear. I am the whisper in the dark, the emptiness that follows." Jabari's heart pounded. You steal names." The shadow circled him, its voice like rustling leaves. "I do not steal. I take what is given. And your people give me their names freely." Jabari shook his head. "No, they don't." The shadow chuckled. "Don't they? They shout their names in anger. They whisper them in dreams. They carve them into trees. Every time they speak their true names carelessly, I take a piece." Jabari clenched his fist. "Give them back." The shadow loomed closer. "Would you make a trade, little one? A name for a name?" Jabari hesitated. He knew the stories. If he gave his name, he might never get it back. But he also knew the village would wither if the shadow was not stopped. So he took a deep breath and whispered his true name. "Jabari." The moment the name left his lips, the shadow lunged. Cold fingers pressed against his forehead, and a terrible emptiness filled him. He stumbled, gasping. He had just said something, hadn't he? But what was it? His name. He had forgotten his name. The shadow laughed, retreating into the darkness. Jabari sank to his knees, lost. Who was he? What was he doing here? Then, something strange happened. He heard a whisper. 100 whispers. The names of the village. They echoed inside him, swirling in his chest. The shadow had taken them, but now, through him, they were awake. Jabari stood. His body burned with names, each one a thread connecting him to his people. He turned to the shadow and spoke, his voice steady. "You hold no power here anymore." The shadow hissed, shrinking. Jabari stepped forward. "You fed on our carelessness. But I will teach my people to guard their names, to treasure them, to honor them. The shadow thrashed, trying to hold its form, but the names it had stolen slipped from its grasp, returning to their rightful owners. With one last shriek, the shadow dissolved, vanishing into the wind. Jabari collapsed, exhausted. The next morning, when the villagers woke, they found him by the river. They rushed to him, crying out his name. But he only blinked at them, confused. Jabari did not remember himself. He had freed them, but at a cost. For days, the village grieved. They spoke of his sacrifice in hushed voices. The elders gathered, whispering prayers for his lost name. Then, the chief, an old woman wise in the ways of the ancestors, stood before the people. We must not let him be forgotten. So they carved his face into stone, telling his story to every child, reminding them of the lesson he had given his name for. A name is not just a word. It is a soul. Protect it. And so, in the kingdom of Nzadi, people spoke their names with care. They carried them like sacred gifts, never wasted them on careless whispers. And though Jabari's name was lost to him, it lived on in every person who remembered. For a name spoken with honor never truly fades.